Hello, I'm Risa Palm, and I'm a professor of urban studies at Georgia State University. And I'm very happy to talk with you today about the several books that have influenced the way that I think about geography and the way that I think about my current research. I think everybody is influenced by the books that they read in graduate school, and I would say that probably one of the books that was most important to me when I was in graduate school was the one by Abler, Adams, and Gould, Spatial Organization, The Geographer's View of the World. This was a book that was written in order to contrast with the kind of individual empirical studies that were done. And the idea here was that there is a kind of science to geography, there's an order to geography, and the book was very much teaching people how to come up with understanding the order that there is, especially as it's related to questions of human geography. This very much influenced the way I've thought about geography and the way that I continue to think about geography, which is very much empirical. It is some kind of an organization and trying to figure out what are the generalizations that we can understand. More recently, I've become very interested in issues of climate change and the environment. And I would say that there are a couple of books that have had an influence. One that I've read recently by Oliver and Wood on Enchanted America talks about the way in which we all experience a kind of magical thinking, they put it. And this is not meant to be in any way derogatory. Magical thinking is the kind of thing that we always engage in. It has to do with relying on spiritual or non-rational ways of thinking. But even examples that I think myself, when I'm driving into town in Atlanta and I say to myself, well, so far the traffic's not too bad. The question you have to ask yourself is, to whom am I saying so far? I'm saying so far in order not to jinx myself, and that is a kind of enchanted thinking. And so we're all engaged in a kind of enchanted thinking. It does seem to affect the way we understand politics, and it does seem to affect the way we understand issues like climate change. I was very concerned in reading The War on Science, and I guess part of what influenced me, Sean Otto, what influenced me about this book and I found interesting about this book is that I feel that I lived through some of the ideas of this. He talks about in the 60s and 70s when truth became questioned and relativity, relationships, social construction of truth became very much in vogue. And what this meant was that there was no such thing, there is no such thing, there was no such thing as objectivity. Instead, everything was subjective. There was no objective truth. And that has had an effect, I think, in the way people think about things like climate change, that you can have an opinion. What is your opinion on climate change? Does it exist? And you can have the opinion that, for example, it doesn't exist, even though this is a counter-scientific kind of idea. Finally, there have been many interesting books written about the particular case study that I become interested in, Florida. And I guess what I have found amusing about Mark Durr's book about some kind of paradise, and he's writing about it a little bit sarcastically, is the development of areas that have become particularly at risk. He tells the story of how Leonard and Jack Rosen, appliance salesmen from Baltimore, developed a place called Cape Coral. What they did was they dredged the swamp. They created oceanside lots, and the lots the housing areas are about an elevation of 5 feet. And so if we think about areas that are now susceptible to sea level rise, these are the areas that were created as people were trying to make a lot of money in Florida and in developing new land. So these are some of the things that have influenced me and are influencing the way that I'm thinking about climate change and urban geography. Thank you.